Hey everybody, I want to talk to you about 4 ways to fight sexual temptation. Now, recently I revealed that I had been wrestling and in bondage and in slavery to sexual desires, promiscuity, self pleasuring, you name it, for 31 years. For 31 years, I had been a slave to my lust and to sexual desires, and I had learned how to suppress it until God revealed to me that suppression does not mean deliverance. And God also revealed to me that I cannot fake my way to holiness. And so when God began to break what was binding me for 31 years, there are 4 things that had to happen, and there's 4 things that I continue to practice. Number 1 is crucifying the flesh. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 24, it says that those who belong to Jesus should learn how to always crucify their flesh. The only way you crucify your flesh and bring it under subjection is through Mark chapter 9, learning how to pray and fast. So we got a responsibility to crucify our flesh as Christians, as Christ followers, but the only way that we successfully do that is through prayer and fasting. Jesus told the disciples the reason that you were wrestling with that spirit that continued to come back and you could not get rid of it was because there's some things that will not stop. Some things will not be cast out unless you do it with prayer and fasting. And so you must learn how to pray, but you also have to learn how to couple that with fasting. And if you don't know how to fast, now is the time to begin learning how to fast, because fasting is what leads us to point 2. Number 2 is consecration. You must learn how to spend time in God's presence, not because you want something, just because you desire to be closer to Him. When you fast, fasting is a primer for consecration. And you want that type of consecration that Moses had in Exodus chapter 34. He was in God's presence for so long that there was a glow to him. And so get this, you won't always fast. Now, fasting leads you to God's presence, but you want to always be in God's presence, not just when you're fasting. Consecration means I'm spending time in God's presence. You need to spend time in God's presence. Now, don't miss this. If you find that spending time in God's presence is a problem, then your issue really isn't sexual desires. Your issue is a Jesus deficiency. Number 3 is community. Now, what I like about Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9, 10, 11, and 12, it simply says that 2 people, companions, friends, are much better than one, because if one person falls, he or she has somebody to help them up. If you're going to effectively wage war against the flesh, against sex and lustful desires, you need accountability. You must have people who are not just spending time in your presence, but people who are going in the same direction because they desire to have more of God and they desire to live a life in God's presence. You need accountability. You need someone who can check you, someone who can help you, someone who can pray with you, someone who can tell you the truth in love. Community. And number 4, I don't think y'all ready for this one. I don't think you're ready for this one. Number 4 is common sense. Hold on, listen. I know we said it's crucifying your flesh. That's deep. Oh, it's consecration. That's deep. Oh, it's community. I don't know. That's deep. Number 4, common sense. One of the greatest ways you're going to wage war is by using wisdom, not willpower. There's some things you just know you don't need to do, places you don't need to go. And what you must learn is you have to be smart until your healing and deliverance comes. You can't get in the boxing ring against sexual desires and expect not to get knocked out. There's some things you just got to say no to. There's some people you got to say, no, I'm good. There's some places, nah, I don't need that. There's some things you watch, some things you hear, nah, I'm good. The fourth way you're going to wage war is through common sense.